Welcome, folks. Thank you for coming tonight. This little event today is part of We Are Takoma. And there's we are Takoma. Or we were Takoma in the case of some of you. But we are Takoma anyway. There's a brochure right out on the desk there. It talks about the other programs throughout the year. Pretty much every Thursday there's something neat going on here. So they made an exception for this. Today is not so neat, but anyway, no, this is neat. So there. Anyway, I'm Joel Snyder, and I am the president of Audio Description Associates, and I also have a contract with the American Council of the Blind to run their audio description project. And I was just telling Melissa, I guess, one of our people here, I make this presentation or something like it from an hour and a half long to 6 days of training. I do this all over the world, over 40 countries now, because I was one of the first audio describers starting in 1981. But it occurred to me I'd never really done it in Takoma Park. I'd never really introduced it to my neighbors and friends and even family members to some extent. They say, oh, yeah, he does audio. Some deaf people. Or no, it's not deaf. Whatever. Anyway, so we're going to clear that up, and we're going to share it with you tonight. I do want to thank Sarah Daines, who works for the city, and Emily Cohen, and people have been just wonderful, and my buddy Rob back there who's controlling everything, so I'm very grateful. What better way to work with, to begin our little hour and a half or work together on description than with description of two visual images. Let's see what we got here. Yeah. Hey, actually, I'm curious. Lauren is back there, I know. We've never met. I don't know this woman. No, can you actually read that bottom line? You don't have to read it aloud. Oh, you can't. What are you, blind? No, you're not blind. You're just too far from the screen. There you go. Lesson number 1. Audio description is something that's good for sighted people, too. People who are in the kitchen making a sandwich, TV's on in the living room. You hear everything you can't see because you're just not there, or you're sitting too far away, or in the other room, whatever. Anyway, The Fan by John McPherson. On a stage, at left, a woman in a flowing gown, her hands clasped in front of her, stands before a kneeling man in a doublet and feathered cap. He croons, "Why dost thy heart turn away from mine?" At right, a man at a microphone speaks. Basically, the guy with the goofy hat is ticked because this babe has been running around with the dude in the black tights. And the caption reads, "Many opera companies now provide interpreters for the culturally impaired." Yeah, and not only that, again, sighted people, there you go. This is a nice little cartoon, but can you tell what he's wearing there at all? No, but you heard the description. Doublet and feathered cap. Again, great for sighted people. So there. Another cartoon for you, Red and Rover by Brian Bassett. In the first panel, Red, a red-haired 8-year-old boy, is outdoors, lying on the ground against a tree, facing away from us, and his right arm is around Rover, a white, short-haired dog, a lab beagle mix. A leaf falls. Red announces, "Brown." In the next panel, as Rover's tail taps, Red notes, "Orange," Red, "Yellow." In the following panel, Red, orange, yellow, yellow. Next, Red turns toward us, eyes wide, and tells us, "Dogs only see in black and white." The final panel depicts a more full view of the tree, leaves scattered about the pair as Red continues. Yellow, orange, brown, red, orange. There you are, ladies and gentlemen, audio description for dogs. Sighted dogs. So there. And, I get that question all the time. Color. Well, first of all, everybody thinks people who are blind are totally blind. They can't see a thing, only black. Totally untrue. It's a very small percentage of people who are blind, legally blind, or certainly visually impaired, that use audio description. Just a small percentage are totally blind and certainly congenitally blind from birth. But I get the question all the time, well, color, so why would you say anything about color to folks who are blind? They don't care about color. Well, not true. Not true. In fact, the next cartoon actually speaks to that. Brewster Rocket. I've heard that we can see red and be purple with rage. Cowards can be yellow. We can be in the black or in a gray area. Be green with envy and in the pink or have the blues. But what does being orange mean? And there's one of Brewster's colleagues having eaten a bag of Cheetos. He says, I really, really like Cheetos. Yeah. Brewster says, I doubt that saying will ever catch on. Yeah. So color is something we learn throughout our lives. A person who's blind learns about color. It's not just a hue. It's a way of thinking, etc. Audio description is a literary art form. He holds his hands out to the side. Actually, I'm going to narrow that in a little bit. It's a kind of poetry. That's what it is. He brings his hands in closer to each other. It's a haiku. His hands are almost touching. And why do I say that? Well, because we use as few words as possible. We are succinct, vivid, and imaginative. We provide a verbal version of the visual. The visual is made verbal and oral. He points to his ear, A-U-R-A-L, and oral. He points to his mouth, O-R-A-L. And we're doing all this to convey the visual image that's not fully accessible to a segment of the population. And the American Foundation for the Blind actually has gathered statistics. They put that number at over 21 million Americans who are blind or have difficulty seeing, even with correction. That's 8% of the population. That's significant. Their friends, their families, these are direct beneficiaries of audio description. But audio description is good for the rest of us, really, when the visual images are not fully realized by, yes, the rest of us, people who are sighted folks who see, but who don't really observe. So it's useful for anyone who wants to truly notice and appreciate a more full perspective on the visual, but especially helpful as an access tool for people who are blind or have low vision. You find audio description. Sure, arts events. I've done description for nationally broadcast television, for films in the movie theaters, and for performing arts. But I've done description also at weddings, at parades, at rodeos, at circuses, sports events, and even funerals. I've had the pleasure to describe. But anyway, there's visual elements there that are important, certainly. Little bit of history. Description is actually been around. I think it's prehistoric times. I think it's been around since prehistoric times. In fact, I did some research. There were two cavemen. They were in a cave. I wasn't there personally, but my brother Irv told me about this. He's much older. Two cavemen, they're munching on some leftover saber-toothed tiger. Yeah, and one of them suddenly rears up, says, "Ugh! There's a mastodon coming from the lift!" It was a Jewish caveman. But anyway, there you have it. The first example of audio description for a sighted guy, right? He's just looking the wrong way. And he benefits from audio description. That's silly, though. Audio description, though, goes back Well, a long ways. As long as people have been blind and they have friends or family who tell them about what they can't see. And, I like to follow this with cartoons because, I started with all of this at the Washington radio reading service where I read the Sunday Washington Post. So, golly, how do you read the comics on Sunday without describing the visual images? 1972, I was a describer. I didn't even know that I were one, but I was a describer, and it only became formal in 1981. Speaking of the Sunday comics, you might recognize this fellow, kind of round face, middle-aged fellow with hair kind of combed over his balding pate, if you will, glasses, suit and tie, got some papers in his hands. He's seated before a microphone. It says WNYC. Who knows this fellow? Yeah. Fiorello LaGuardia, the namesake of LaGuardia Airport, of course, in New York. Well, he was named for him because he was a very popular mayor of New York City in the 1940s. Much beloved. And indeed, perhaps because he did things like the following. There's a newspaper strike during his tenure. And, he didn't take the side of the workers. He didn't take the side of the publishers. He took the side of the people. Yeah, he decided his people were missing the newspaper. And what's the most important part of the newspaper? Of course, he went on the radio, WNYC, on Sundays, and made like Joel. Well, no, that wouldn't work. Joel made like Fiorello. He read the comics on the radio to his people in New York, and of course he had to describe them. So Fiorello LaGuardia was a describer. Ronald Reagan was a describer. When he was a sports announcer, he wasn't necessarily at the sports events. He was in a room with a ticker tape, and the sport event, the baseball game is hundreds of miles away. He's got the ticker tape, base hit, fly out, home run, whatever. He would announce that, but also provide the color. He was describing the game, and he wasn't even at the game, but he was providing the rest of the image for folks listening, not blind people, anybody listening. Speaking of politicians, here's a photo of a guy who's how shall we say, portly gentleman wearing a tie, beard, balding. Yes, that's me. And I'm holding a Stenomask microphone. That's the microphone we use when we don't want to be heard by the person next to us, but it's attached to a transmitter, and people who are blind have a receiver. This is at a White House event. The White House under Barack Obama has been real big on audio description, actually, because he named the first special assistant for disability policy ever, Kareem Dale, a black guy from Chicago, a lawyer. Sound familiar? Only difference is Kareem's blind. And I got to be good friends with Kareem, I will admit it, working on Barack Obama's campaign in 2008. And from that, I began to work with Kareem to get events described at the White House and in other ways. And yes, there I am shaking hands with Mr. Obama. We went on to describe both of his inaugurations on ABC television and ACB radio. And we created, ultimately, the very first audio-described tour of the White House. If you've ever been through the White House, you know it's just a linear walk through. Nobody's telling you anything. You just walk through and see stuff. Secret Service agents are there to provide a little information if you ask. But people who are blind now can go through and listen to an audio-described tour. Each of the 10 stops or so are described. The whole thing's introduced by Michelle Obama and voiced by Eddie Walker, who you may remember as one of Washington's favorite radio announcers, a blind man and a good friend. He voiced the description for the White House tour. Let me help you see what description is all about by asking you figuratively to close your eyes. You don't have to close your eyes, really, or play blind. I'm going to make you blind, essentially. I'm going to play just a little excerpt from a feature film Played in theaters, been on television. The Color of Paradise, Iranian film. Anybody know it? Good. Nobody. Esther does. All right. Well, that's okay. You can't play. I'm going to play the film. I mean, this is a feature film, but, so I'm not going to play the picture, the video, just going to play the sound. Should be no problem. You'll get exactly what, I mean, the original soundtrack is there, but I want you to experience it as a person who's totally blind would. So let's see. No, let's see. Let's give a listen. That's what we'll do. Hello. Oh, wasn't that great? Huh? It's my favorite film. Yeah, isn't that great? Oh my God, look at the time. Well, that was about an hour and a half long, wasn't it? Oy. Well, thank you for coming. And that was well, it felt so long. It didn't. Well, tell me what was going on. You got it, right? What in the film? What was going on? Anybody? Just what do you think? There's water, a lot of birds. Oh, a struggle, like with another person or horses' hooves, right? Horses' hooves and near the water. A lot of birds. You heard birds. Very good, birds. Nothing gets past this woman. She heard she heard birds. Maybe seagulls or something. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Melissa. A woman, a girl, or you think? Yeah. Okay. Irv, you're nodding. Oh, a child. Okay. Yes, sir.
I kept thinking it was climbing out of something, and then it was sort of confirmed because after a while the sound changed.
Ah.
And then I heard it was a dog barking.
Dog barking. Okay.
Down in some place, and that sound.
Yeah. Yeah.
The birds was confusing.
Birds are confused. Yeah. All right. Well, that's interesting. So we got a dog, and we got horses, and we got the seagulls going. Let's see. We're seagulls. Yeah, Beverly. Yeah. Climbing, climbing out of a oh, up a hill. Oh, dirt. Yeah, yeah. Got it. Okay, okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay, a girl maybe. Yeah. Digging. All right, so we got the digging, we got the birds, we got the horses, we got dogs, we got the seaside, we got the. You know what I think? I think you don't have a clue as to what's going on. And can you imagine, inviting your friend over who's blind and you're watching this DVD? And of course, you had to start the DVD because the damn DVD has a visual menu, and that's changing. We're working on that, right, so that they will speak to you. But can you imagine you get to this segment and then you have to try to describe? There's no description track. So what's, well, they're birds. Yeah, I know they're birds. Of course they're birds. Well, I don't know. Well, wait, let me watch it because then I can tell what you're watching it. I'm blind. I can't see the thing. I don't know what's going on while you're watching. I'm sitting. No, I know that. But I'm going to try and describe. All right, try and describe it. Well, that's what I'm going to try to do. All right, but the film is going. All right, I understand. And then they're not friends anymore. Because it's an awful thing. I don't know. You guys, I don't know, Takoma Parkians, I thought everybody was, well, you didn't really get very far with that. I'm going to play it again. I'll play it again, another hour and a half, but this time with audio description. You're not going to see it. And I don't know. You guys were all over. Well, I don't think it's going to help, but let's give it a try, and maybe you'll get a bit something. I don't know. Horses, dogs, yeah, I don't know.
Muhammad kneels and taps his hands through the thick ground cover of brown, curled leaves. A scrawny nestling struggles on the ground near Muhammad's hand. His palm hovers above the baby bird. He lays his hand lightly over the tiny creature. Smiling, Muhammad curls his fingers around the chick and scoops it into his hands. He stands and strokes its nearly featherless head with a fingertip. Muhammad starts as the bird nips his finger. He taps his finger on the chick's gaping beak. He tilts his head back, then drops it forward. Muhammad tips the chick into his front shirt pocket. Wrapping his legs and arms around a tree trunk, Muhammad climbs. He latches onto a tangle of thin upper branches. His legs flail for a foothold. Muhammad stretches an arm between a fork in the trunk of the tree and wedges in his head and shoulder. His shoes slip on the rough bark. He wraps his legs around the lower trunk, then uses his arms to pull himself higher. He rises into thicker foliage and holds onto tangles of smaller branches. Gaining his footing, Muhammad stands upright and cocks his head to one side. An adult bird flies from a nearby branch. Muhammad extends his open hand. He touches a branch and runs his fingers over wide green leaves. He pats his hand down the length of the branch. His fingers trace the smooth bark of the upper branches, search the network of connecting tree limbs, and discover their joints. Above his head, Muhammad's fingers find a dense mass of woven twigs, a bird's nest. Smiling, he removes the chick from his shirt pocket and drops it gently into the nest beside another fledgling. He rubs the top of the chick's head with his index finger. Muhammad wiggles his finger like a worm and taps the chick's open beak. Smiling, he slowly lowers his hand.
Ah. Oh my goodness, that was a lot quicker. What is that about? That's somebody do a PhD on that. That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, what happened to the horses though, and the dogs and the water? Oh, Well, I don't know. That must have been another version of the. What was going on there? No, well, I'll tell you. I do have a question for you. I mean, obviously, that makes it more clear and is of use. And this was broadcast on ABC years ago, and it was a pleasure to do this film. But let me ask you this. This is an excerpt from the middle of the film. Muhammad, the character Muhammad, was described earlier in the film, what he looks like, you know, what he's wearing, his visage, if you will. But just from having listened closely to the words of the description in this segment, what can you tell me about Muhammad? Just from having listened to this. Kind, gentle, sure. Young. Yeah, sure, young. Anything else?
He's persistent.
Yeah, right. He's fit. Yes, he's climbing trees. He's more fit than I am. I ain't climbing no trees lately. What? Yeah. And say again.
He has shoes on.
Yeah, he does. They rub against the bark. He's got a shirt with a pocket. Duh. Anything else?
To know about birds, he's tapping. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, clearly he's into birds. Yeah, he's trying to save one. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. I'm going to play this sucker again. Yeah. And I'm going to play it with the picture this time because I think you got the gist of it. But I want you to watch and listen. And in about 10 seconds, I think you're all going to go, I could have had a V8. Oh, of course. Duh. Let's give it a try. That's right. Oh, what happened here? Hold on. Technical difficulties. Here we go.
Muhammad kneels and taps his hands through the thick ground cover of brown curled leaves. A scrawny nestling struggles on the ground near Muhammad's hand. His palm hovers above the baby bird. He lays his hand lightly over the tiny creature. Smiling, Muhammad curls his fingers around the chick and scoops it into his hands. He stands and strokes its nearly featherless head with a fingertip. Muhammad starts as the bird nips his finger. He taps his finger on the chick's gaping beak. He tilts his head back, then drops it forward. Muhammad tips the chick into his front shirt pocket. Wrapping his legs and arms around a tree trunk, Muhammad climbs.
He crushes the bird to death. No, that's not right. I'm being silly. Yeah.
He latches onto a tangle of thin upper branches. His legs flail for a foothold. Muhammad stretches an arm between a fork in the trunk of the tree and wedges in his head and shoulder. His shoes slip on the rough bark. He wraps his legs around the lower trunk, then uses his arms to pull himself higher. He rises into thicker foliage and holds onto tangles of smaller branches. Gaining his footing, Muhammad stands upright and cocks his head to one side. An adult bird flies from a nearby branch. Muhammad extends his open hand. He touches a branch and runs his fingers over wide green leaves. He pats his hand down the length of the branch. His fingers trace the smooth bark of the upper branches, search the network of connecting tree limbs, and discover their joints.
His fingers.
Above his head, Muhammad's fingers find a dense mass of woven twigs, a bird's nest. Smiling, he removes the chick from his shirt pocket and drops it gently into the nest beside another fledgling. He rubs the top of the chick's head with his index finger. Muhammad wiggles his finger like a worm and taps the chick's open beak. Smiling, he slowly lowers his hand.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you. Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to play it 5 more times, and I want you. No, that's not true. But I am going to show you the script, and I've annotated it. If you'll, at the top of the screen, I have the first line, for instance. He taps his hands through the thick ground cover of brown curled leaves. Well, this is what we discussed earlier. Color has been shown to be important to people with low vision, but even people who are congenitally blind. The next note is just one of the cues, the gasp and the chirping early on. Timing is critical in the crafting of description. We weave descriptive language around a film's sound elements, not just dialogue, but sound elements. Down at the bottom of the screen here, he curls his fingers around the chick and scoops it into his hands. He doesn't grab it. He doesn't pick it up. He scoops it. Vivid verbs help conjure images in the mind's eye. Here's another one. Muhammad starts as the bird nips his finger. He taps his finger on the chick's gaping beak. He tilts his head back, then drops it forward. Muhammad tips the chick into his front shirt pocket. Taps, tilts, tips. Alliteration. Description, like much poetry, is written to be heard. It adds alliteration, adds variety, helps to maintain interest. And then a little bit later on, an adult bird flies from a nearby branch. Yeah, what to include? Well, that image is important because that adult bird returns in the next scene. Yeah, so description is actually about what not to describe. We see plenty. We're going to cut out 85% of it. We go to the essence. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then finally, at the end, he rubs the top of the chick's head with his index finger. Yeah, not his pinky, not his thumb. No, his index finger. And that kind of specificity, that precision, can create images. And at the end, finally, he rubs the top of the chick's head with his index finger. Oh, yeah, there you go, down. Muhammad wiggles his finger like a worm. There's no worm there. Why, wait, I thought we were supposed to describe things that are there so that blind... Well, by using a simile, by using your imagination and invoking the image of a worm, you help people see what Muhammad is doing with his finger. So that kind of imagination is what vision is all about, actually, and can be very helpful. Speaking of Muhammad, a child, I want to talk briefly about a workshop I did in New Haven at the Connecticut Children's Museum. I worked with daycare workers there and with blind kids. We were looking to develop more descriptive language when the teachers are working with the little ones, and picture books. Picture books. Now think about that. Picture books rely on pictures to tell the story. Duh. But, the teacher trained in audio description techniques. Not the teacher, could be Aunt Beverly with her nieces and nephews, whatever. Aunt Beverly gets to this picture. I think she would never simply hold up this picture of a red ball and read the text. See the ball and turn the page? No. No, Aunt Beverly would say, perhaps, the ball is red. Yeah, just like a fire engine. I think that ball is as large as you are. It's as round as the sun, a bright red circle or sphere. Aunt Beverly, using description, has introduced new vocabulary, invited comparisons, even used metaphor or simile. I didn't know what a simile was till, last week. Esther told me what it was. Simile with toddlers. So I think audio description, you make books accessible to children who have low vision or are blind, and you help develop more sophisticated literacy, language skills for all kids. So we all know the phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, maybe, but the describer might say that a few well-chosen words can conjure vivid and lasting images. And speaking of children, I was very pleased to provide description. I led a staff that worked on description for the first time for Sesame Street. And it's been around 40 years or something now. And it's still broadcast with description. We did it for about 6 years or so. And I got a letter from a woman who was kind of touched. She was a blind parent of sighted kids. And she loved Sesame Street when she was a kid. She would listen to it and sing along, and she liked the music, and it was just sort of fun. She never really knew what the characters looked like or what the action was, But now with audio description, she could, quote unquote, watch it with her kids and see Elmo and Bert and Ernie and all the other denizens of Sesame Street. And we did the DVDs, and we did the Spanish version of Sesame Street, which is in the Southwest. It's called Plaza Sesamo. And you want to know a secret, because you may not ever see it. Big Bird is green in Plaza Sesamo. That's like sacrilegious. Big Bird is yellow, huh? Anyway, I can't talk about Sesame Street without providing just a snippet for you with description.
Elmo stands beside Dorothy's fishbowl.
Hi, this is Elmo's world. Oh, Elmo's so very happy to see you. Oh, and so is Dorothy. Say hello, Dorothy.
An orange goldfish.
Oh, guess what Elmo's thinking about today?
Elmo glances around himself.
Hear that? Yeah.
Elmo dances to a purple door and opens it. Outside, people and puppets sit on steps on Sesame Street. The doorway stretches wide.
Oh, thank you.
The people and puppets wave at Elmo. Elmo turns around.
Oh, Sesame Street.
Oscar pops up.
Hey, get lost.
Oscar. You know Sesame Street.
Elmo and the others dance. Now a bird puppet flies over Sesame Street. Alan dances with a broom. A man in ballet tights jumps up and down with letters. People and puppets bounce. 4 cartoon baby dragons appear. A man dressed in a big letter M dances on a beach. A bat puppet follows the count. Maria kisses Luis on the cheek. A blonde woman plays piano. A cartoon orange wears sunglasses. Grover the waiter drops dishes. Big Bird plays with children. Rosita dances with sheep puppets. A boy wears a red mask and yellow cape. Alpha Boy. Bert struts. Cartoon men dance. A bearded man dances with a cane. A woman plays guitar. Ernie holds a banana in his ear. Telly does an Egyptian dance. A woman claps while puppets sway. Zoe dances with a boy and girl. A man sits at a piano and squeezes a rubber ducky. A man plays an electric guitar. Gordon waves from a window. Cookie Monster hugs a doll. Now Dorothy swims by a small green lamppost in her bowl. A sign, Sesame Street.
Look, Dorothy's been thinking about Sesame Street, too.
Yeah, shut up, little Elmo. Oh, anyway, so Sesame Street. I'd say about 30 states now here in the U.S. have description in live theater and in museums via particular audio-described tours or perhaps trained docents. Essentially all states have some movie theaters that offer audio description now, and more DVDs have an audio description track, although we're way behind the United Kingdom, which is odd, and we're working on that. In a live theater setting, at designated performances, depending on the availability of the service, how it's administered, people desiring audio description get a small headset and earpieces that are attached to small receivers about the size of a cigarette pack. And often before the show, a taped or live version of the program notes plays through the headsets, and then a describer narrates the performance from another part of the theater via an FM radio transmitter or infrared transmitter. guiding the audience through with concise, hopefully objective descriptions of the scenes and settings, action, that kind of thing. So that's where audio description began, at Arena Stage, actually. In 1981, we began providing audio description on theater, for theater there. And we're still doing it, actually. I worked with their production of Fiddler on the Roof just very recently and in the spring, providing description at every performance of their show, Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike. I got that right. Very funny comedy. Every performance will have description available, and it will be scripted. No extemporaneous kind of thing. So that's a first for doing something to that extent, really. And, you know, live events, it doesn't have to be theater. For a year and a half, I was on a contract with Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, and I would assign describers, or I would go myself on a cruise, if I liked where they were going. I would go myself to provide description for blind passengers. And one neat thing that happened, you know, the shows on the ship and the excursions and all of that, even bingo games I did. Anyway, whatever they needed, the shopping, all of that stuff. So, but one neat thing, you know, on cruises, karaoke is a staple of cruise events. And there was one time when I was providing description for a blind woman from Washington State, Denise Colley, and I knew Denise. She had a beautiful voice. I knew that, and I thought, hey, this is neat. You know, Denise, there's the karaoke going on tonight. You really should do it. You have a beautiful voice. And I said, you know, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do my If I Were a Rich Man's shtick or something. But Denise, you really should. And she said, Joel, excuse me, I know about karaoke, and I'm blind. Perhaps you did not notice. Yeah, I can't see the monitor to read the lyrics. And I said, yeah. Let's do it, Denise. I got you covered. So here you go. This is an image of yours truly, upstage, if you will, at the rear of the stage, with my StenoMask microphone connected to a transmitter. Denise is downstage, if you will, forward. She's got the microphone to sing into, but she's also got a small receiver and an earpiece. There's the television monitor with the lyrics. The lyrics came up on the monitor. I see them. I voice them. Denise hears them. Denise sings. Within a second, all of that happens, and she won the contest that night. So there. So props to Denise. Of course, I was a little pissed because I didn't win the contest, but you know, it's all right. She was wonderful. She was wonderful. And here's a taste of how description is done in museums, or how we give greater access to museums. I'm going to read you the description. I'm not going to show you the image. I'm just going to read you the description and see, does it conjure an image in the mind's eye? This is at the International Spy Museum, where I did their audio described tour. At the end of the hallway is a life-sized black and white photo portrait of Mata Hari. Her dark hair is topped with a bejeweled tiara, and she's costumed exotically. Fabric drapes her left shoulder, and her right arm is raised with her hand at her tiara. Her top is bare, save for jewel-encrusted arm and wristbands and brassiere. Her midriff is exposed, and the lower portion of her body is swathed in additional folds of fabric. A placard tells us that she was a legend in her own mind. Mata Hari embodied all the romance of espionage. This exotic dancer turned World War I spy supposedly seduced diplomats and military officers into giving up their secrets. But history shows that most of her exploits took place only in her imagination. Now, do you have in your imagination an image of Mata Hari? Does it look like this? You better say yeah. So that's Mata Hari for you, down at the International Spy Museum. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? Boy. Speaking of museums, I have I have a true story for you that involves museums. A blind fellow was visiting a museum and with some friends, and a woman there had the temerity to actually approach him and say, "Excuse me, you, what are you doing in a museum? You can't see any of the exhibits." And was a bit taken aback. His response, "I'm here for the same reason anyone goes to a museum. I want to learn, I want to know, I want to be a part of our culture." His inability to see shouldn't deny him access to culture. And I think it's the responsibility of all arts institutions to be as inclusive as possible. It's access to culture. That's everybody's right. There just is no good reason why a person with a physical disability must also be culturally disadvantaged. No, and I should emphasize one point. In the United States, the principal constituency for audio description, people who are blind, has an unemployment rate of 70%, 7-0. We get concerned about 8 or 9 or 10, you know. I think that with more meaningful access to culture and its resources, well, people become more informed, more engaged with society, and more engaging individuals, thus more employable. Now, in the time remaining, I've trained describers all over the world. Let me show you a bit about what I think is most useful to learn description and provide it in ways that will be most helpful. I recall many years ago being absolutely amazed when I first encountered Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's brilliant detective, Sherlock Holmes. Brilliant and incredibly observant. So when I developed the 4 fundamentals of audio description some years back, I made the first of them all about that skill that Sherlock Holmes honed, if you will, observation. And I've got a quote up there under observation. You know, the great philosopher Yogi Berra, he said, I think he was a catcher in his spare time, something for the Yankees or some. Anyway, he said it best. You can see a lot just by looking. So true. The describer has to increase his level of awareness, become an active seer, not a fortune teller, one who sees. Develop a visual literacy. Notice the visual world with a heightened sense of acuity and share those images. As Ruskin said, John Ruskin, sees what we see. Goethe, see with exactitude. And Helen Keller, she said it, those who have never suffered impairment of sight or hearing seldom make the fullest use of these blessed faculties. Their eyes and ears take in all sights and sounds hazily, without concentration and with little appreciation. Yeah, we can't do that as describers. We must see everything. Let me ask you, what do you see here? I've got projected an image up on the screen here. What do you see? Very good. The FedEx logo. The FedEx logo. That's absolutely right. I dare say FedEx, big company. I bet you they spent many thousands of dollars on a graphic designer to come up with 5 letters, block letters abutting each other, FED in blue, EX in orange. Many thousands of dollars to do that. To do that, just the FedEx logo. Why? What? Yeah. Oh, in the negative space between the E and the X, there's an arrow. FedEx pointing to the right. Because FedEx moves. It's going to the right. That kind of thing. Companies do this stuff. Right? What color is McDonald's French fries box? I know you don't go to McDonald's, but you've heard that their French fry boxes are, you bet, because red inspires hunger. It's warmth. Yeah. And the inside of the box white and yellow vertical stripes, so that when you have 3 French fries left, it looks like you still have 10. They are not stupid, these people, you know? Evil, maybe, but not stupid. Oh, that's bad. It's Takoma Park. Yeah, people tend to look at a logo and go, oh, yeah, that's the FedEx logo. I know that. Next. No, naming something is not description. You have to really look to come up with what's important about that. Seeing, as Paul Valéry said, seeing is forgetting the name of what one sees. Get the name away. Okay, you know the name, but what is it? Look at it. Really look at it. Yeah. Okay, we'll give you another little test here. Listen to this here, a little video for you.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
What'd you get?
The answer
12?
is 13.
13. But
did you see the moonwalking bear?
what the hell? What is he talking about? No. There was no moonwalking. The bear, it's a bears basketball. There's no bears. What the hell? There he is. It's easy to miss something you're not looking for. Look out for cyclists. So it's a commercial for the Tube in London for their transportation authority. Yeah, seeing really what's there. And don't be distracted by some guy telling you to look for the white team or something. No, really look. Holmes did that, and he was a medical doctor. He was able to diagnose by looking at a patient and listening to the patient. Doctors don't do that so much these days. They're too busy looking at their computer and reading test results. That's true. That's true. You're right. Now, we've seen so much, but there's far more to see than you can possibly describe. Description is about what not to describe, so we must edit. We must cull from what we see, select what is most valid, what's most important, what is most critical to an understanding, he points to his head, and an appreciation, his hand is over his heart, of the visual image. Figuring out what not to describe. Of all people, Chief Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes said it nicely. The great struggle of art is to leave out all but the essential. It trims things back for you. It clarifies. That's what art can do for people, and that's what describers do by getting to the essential, the essence. Georgia O'Keeffe, wonderful artist. It is only by selection, by elimination, by emphasis that we get at the real meaning of things. And then we use our basic understanding of blindness and low vision, go from the general to the specific, include directional information, much easier to follow if they know you're going clockwise, counterclockwise, top, bottom, left to right, right to left. What is being conveyed by the director or the cinematographer? We are in service to the art form and the people listening. So we develop a film literacy, video literacy, dance literacy, theater literacy. We try to glean what is most essential on behalf of the director. We can't talk to those people. In the museum, we have a curator often. But that's what's different about what we're doing at Arena Stage. The describer is going to go to the rehearsals, talk to the director, talk to the costume designer, talk to the set designer, etc. And I think that'll make everything much more valuable. Third fundamental, language. Here's where we spend the most time. Less is more. Clarity, imagination, objectivity. We transfer it all to words. We translate it to words. Objective, vivid, specific, imaginatively drawn words, phrases, metaphors. For instance, how tall is this? I got this image up on the screen here. You all probably recognize it. It's the Washington Monument. How would you convey to a visitor to Washington, how would you convey with words its height? Comparing it to a flagpole. Sure, it's whatever number times higher than flagpoles are 30 feet or something, right? But why couldn't you just say it's 555 feet tall? It is. Isn't that? No reference point. Sure, 555 feet. You know, when you go home tonight, you can tell your significant other, or if you have your significant other with you, you can discuss it. Go home tonight and say, yeah, we went to this thing with Dr. Snyder. Boy, he's great. He's just wonderful. Wow, it was such a... And we were in this room. It was kind of semicircle. It was maybe 5,000 square feet. And your significant other will probably say, if he's anything like me, he'd say, well, that's nice, dear. How big was the room? 5,000 square, what is what? What is that? No, it was the size of a basketball court, maybe. I don't know if they make semicircular basketball courts. I'm not sure. The Washington Monument, yeah, reference point. Maybe it's as high as, just very simply, 50 stories. Or it's as high as 50 elephants stacked one on top of the other. Or maybe it's almost as tall as 2 football fields set up vertically. We use language imaginatively to convey images. That's when we're at our most effective. And, you know, Jonathan Swift said it nicely. He said, vision is the art of seeing things invisible. There ain't no worm. But if you see the worm and invoke it, you will convey it in the mind's eye of your listener. Ain't no worm, ain't no elephants, ain't no whatever, right? But Mark Twain said it even better. You cannot depend on your eyes when your imagination is out of focus. Isn't that great? Leave it to the humorists. Yeah, language. How many different words can you use to describe someone walking on a sidewalk, right? Why say walk when you can more vividly describe the action with sashay, stroll, skip, stumble, saunter? You're only allowed to use S words, actually. I don't know how that happened. Yeah. But now, language, I mentioned less is more. Good describers strive for simplicity, succinctness. And, of course, in writing a letter to a friend, the philosopher and mathematician Blaise Pascal wrote to his friend, I've only made this letter longer because I've not had the time to make it shorter. That's what we have to do. We have to edit not only what we see, but edit the words we use. 2 editing stages there, if you will. Now, describers use language vividly, yeah, and see beyond what's apparent. There ain't no worm there. But we do have to maintain a certain degree of objectivity. And that's why describers often use this acronym in talking about what they do. WYSI. WYS. What's that? What you see is what you say. Yeah, sure. So, well, wait a second. You just talked about seeing a worm and all of that. Well, this has to do with keeping yourself out of your descriptions, right? We objectively recount visual aspects. Our qualitative judgments get in the way. They are a subjective interpretation on the part of the describer. They're unnecessary. They're unwanted. Let the listener conjure their own interpretations based on a commentary that is as objective as possible. So if I see Esther and she's crying, tears are streaming down her face. She is, She is so sad. She's forlorn. I think she's depressed. Is that good description? What do you mean? I'm the master here. What are you talking? That's right. Esther just won the Maryland lottery, which is great because she doesn't even play the thing. But she did. She won the Maryland lottery. She's crying because now we can buy an island off of Costa Rica and get the hell out of the yoga business and all of that stuff. So, yeah, let your audience make their own judgments, because I'll tell you something. I know a secret about people who are blind. I've been working with them a long time. They don't see so good. Some people don't see nothing, but their brains are perfectly intact. They don't need you to say sad. They listen to your description, tears streaming, crying, and within a context that's already set up, they will figure it out. And that's the fun of listening to any piece of art or whatever, observing art, making up your own mind about what it is based on what you see objectively. And in particular, because as Anais Nin said, we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. We bring our own something, and we have to tamp it down. We have to be as objective as possible. And finally, the fourth fundamental, vocal skills. 98% of description is allowed, is oral. There have been times when I created a description that was brailled for people who could just read the description as they sit in an audience. But that's rare. In fact, braille is only used by about 10% of people who are blind, which is, people think, oh, blind, braille, yeah, sure. Do you speak braille? Yeah, blind people get that all the time. Do you speak braille? Yeah. Anyway, vocal skills. In addition to building that verbal capability, the describer has to develop the vocal instrument through work with speech and with oral interpretation fundamentals. We make meaning with our voices. The person voicing the description can ruin the description for you. The person voicing the description can take some mediocre description and make it really meaningful just with the voice. Just with the voice. I'll give you an example. I've got a few words up here on the screen. Woman without her man is a savage. I think we can all agree with that. Let's move on. Woman without her man. Yeah? No? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah, well, you agree. You're agreeing with me. I heard that laugh. Woman without her man is a savage. Okay, if you don't agree, we got a number of women in the audience here. I want you to say those words back to me. Don't change any words. Don't take any away. Don't add any. Don't change the order. Simply say those words to me and make it mean the opposite. Well, you can make it a question, but, that doesn't do it. Nah. Well, not, what? Wait, what? Woman, semicolon. Without her, comma, man is a savage. Voice, the voice is just inflection. It's nothing but vocal punctuation, essentially. That's what we're doing. So we put in the punctuation. Very good. But we got a woman got that. Thank God. Oof. There you go. Woman. Without her, man is a savage. All right, Miss Hoffman person. You think you're so smart. Try this one. All of you, huh? That is that is not, that, I'm sorry, I started to go on there. Same thing, just make it mean something. Make it have meaning just by the way you say it. Bah. Bingo! That is, comma, is. Semicolon. That is not, comma, is not. Duh. duh. You know, it just sort of jumps out and bites you on the leg. It's obvious when it's said the way it should be said, huh? And then finally, with vocal skills, it's important to have a certain degree of consonance with what it is you're describing. It's a sad scene. It's a happy scene. Just the subtle hint of matching the tone, the mood. You must be in consonance. When description first started, everybody was of the opinion that you have to sound like a golf announcer. Okay, now they're doing this. Now they're doing that. Now they're doing the other. Now they're... No. That's ridiculous. It's distracting, even. You must be in consonance with what's happening. So I want to end with a fun example of description, if you will, and then there'll be a few minutes for questions or whatever, and for you to consider buying my book out there. No, anyway. But this is kind of fun. The largest captioning company in the nation, Vitac, and my little company would, for several years at least, we collaborated on a little Halloween gift to the world on YouTube. We would describe and caption Night of the Living Dead, public domain films, that were scary thingies for Halloween. And 2 years ago, I think it was, we decided to do a Popeye cartoon that we found called Fright to the Finish. Halloween, right? Here you go.
Lowercase letters appear. AAP, a title Associated Artists Productions presents Popeye the Sailor, Fright to the Finish. Copyright 1954. Nighttime, a carved pumpkin on a fence post. Light flickers inside it. Tree branches reach out like grasping fingers. In the front room of a home under a full moon, thin olive oil reads from a book, Halloween Ghost Stories. She sits between large bearded Bluto and short bald Popeye, both frowning. Thought bubbles. Popeye, ain't Bluto got no home to go to? Bluto, how can I get rid of that runt Popeye?
From these ingredients, the witches brew their magic potions. Those who partake of this potent liquid will become imbued with an unearthly spirit. But woe to the unfortunate disbeliever, for an evil spell shall be cast upon him. So beware this Halloween Eve, when the earth will be haunted by spooks, ghosts, and hobgoblins.
Popeye turns to her.
Olive, there ain't no such things. They're just figmentations of the imaginations.
Bluto, finger to his chin, grins slyly, stands and yawns.
Pardon me, folks, but it's way past my bedtime.
Popeye jumps up, pushing Bluto to the door.
You have to go, Chub.
He plops a cap on Bluto's head, opens the door,
Good night, Bluto.
and pushes Bluto out.
Boy, oh boy, I thought he'd never leave.
At the sofa, he walks his fingers on its back and around Olive's shoulders.
There's someone at the door.
Outside, a large figure with a carved pumpkin head offering its head to Olive.
Good evening. Is this the olive oil residence?
Olive jumps out of her stockings and shoes.
Popeye, there's a headless man at the door.
Burrows her head under a
There
rug.
ain't no such camino.
Bluto lights the fuse of a firecracker and places it in the pumpkin on a pole.
Olive and her stupid stishkins.
Only the pumpkin outside the door.
Why, it's nothing but a jack-o'-lantern, Olive.
The pumpkin and Popeye's head are gone. Olive turns toward him.
The headless man.
Olive runs under the rug, slicing it with her narrow neck. Popeye's head pops up. Olive, panting, slumps in a chair, looking down.
I'll get you some water, Olive.
Bluto on a balcony dangles a skeleton marionette before Olive and imitates Popeye's voice.
Here's your Glasgow water, Olive.
Oh, thank you.
She drinks, glancing up at the skeleton. Her eyes pop out. Olive hops atop the chair and dives into an umbrella stand.
Olive, there's nothing like a cool drink of water to revive your spirits.
In the chair, the skeleton, it drinks the water. The liquid spills through its bones.
Olive!
It tosses the pitcher onto Popeye's head and zips out of sight. He tugs the pitcher off, his head now in the shape of the pitcher. Outside a window, Bluto blows up a balloon and drapes a sheet over it, painting eyes on the material. He reaches through the window, releasing the balloon inside the house. It floats upward. Olive pops out. The ghost balloon glides toward her. She rushes past Popeye. The balloon follows.
Olive, is that you? I didn't recognize you without your skin on.
Bluto, with a slingshot, pops the balloon and the sheet falls onto Popeye. Olive beats him with a broom.
Get out of this house at once, you hobgoblin!
The sheet flies off.
Popeye! So you're the one that's been horrorizing me.
She tosses him outdoors.
Get out and stay out!
The skeleton descends, placing its bony arms around Popeye.
Now there's a girlfriend for you. So long, chump. I gotta protect Olive from those nasty old hobgoblins.
Popeye scowls. Olive peers out her door.
Oh, it's you, Bluto.
Yeah, Olive. I thought you might want some company.
So, that's Bluto's scheme.
Popeye rushes to Olive's bedroom window.
He thinks I'll do some spooking myself.
On Olive's vanity, vanishing cream.
Just what I need.
Popeye applies it to his body, erasing himself. The bedroom door opens and closes.
And you don't have to be afraid of ghosts while I'm around.
Bluto's cap wraps itself over his face.
Hey!
A nearby candle floats up. Olive's chin drops. Olive dives inside a standing ashtray. Bluto tugs his cap off, facing the floating candle.
Help! Spooks! Witches! Hobgoblins! Help!
The candle chases Bluto through two doors. One closes on Bluto's neck. His tongue wags out of his mouth. A rope zooms through the other door and around the base of a dress mannequin on wheels. A sheet drapes itself over the mannequin, and the rope pulls it toward Bluto. The rope's other end attaches itself to Bluto's pants, his head stuck on the other side of the door. Bluto frees himself facing the ghost mannequin.
Ghost! Let me out of here!
Bluto crashes through the front door, the ghost following. Popeye now visible. Olive pops out of the ashtray.
Popeye, you're back!
She runs to Popeye, draping her arms around him. Lipstick covers Popeye's face. He faces us.
Loves them ghosts.
Captioning by Vitac, a Merrill Communications Company. Recording services provided by Dominion Post with audio description by Audio Description Associates and the American Council of the Blind's Audio Description Project.
Yeah, all right. Well, sorry for that, whatever the video was doing there. I don't know. It did not do that in rehearsal. But anyway, that was kind of a stop action effect or something. I don't know what that was. But, you know, hell, you had your eyes closed, right? Or you weren't. You're just listening. You got it all. So I've projected up here my contact information and information about my book, which is available outside and at fine bookstores near you, whatever. The Visual Made Verbal, a comprehensive training manual and guide to the history and applications of audio description. It's the first book of its sort, and it's available on Amazon.com, its own website, and at the American Council of the Blind's website, too. And a couple of audio description training institutes coming up. I just completed one in Washington in April for the American Foundation for the Blind. I'll be in Phoenix, and again for the American Council of the Blind in the summer in Dallas. And with that, do you have any questions or thoughts, or what is this thing really anyway, or how does it work? Or yes. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to have a microphone come because we're on TV here, so that's going to pick you up.
You're on Candy Camera.
That's right.
Goodness.
Uh-oh. He's going to fix that. Yeah, there you go. He's going to fix that. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
While I was watching a Popeye cartoon, it made me aware of the fact that the description wasn't in real time. It was
Correct.
actually a few minutes ahead. You were
Seconds.
actually saying,
Yeah,
within seconds, and then we would see this action.
Correct.
And that is really a terrific skill to be able to do that.
You know,
the
sight
timing
gags,
part.
That's right. Sight gags depend on that kind of thing. So you have to try and find the pauses before the bit, if you will, so that the person who's blind can laugh right along with everybody else. If you do it afterwards, it won't be heard because everybody's laughing, and you're just going to lose it. You know, it's much better to get it in before, just before. You don't have to describe in real time. Necessarily.
As a blind person, that's
Yeah.
what I appreciate most about the description is that it's anticipating what's going to happen and
right.
it really makes the big difference.
Yes, it can be helpful. That's very very good point, actually. Yes, sir.
It seems as though it would be challenging when, as in theater, most of what's happening is simply spoken. In a film, there's a lot going on that isn't that.
That's right.
And you have time to describe. But how do you juggle that when there's just lots of dialogue?
Yeah.
And how do you get in because the people can hear that?
Right. I mean, in performing arts, in a show that's very fast-paced, Popeye cartoon. Some shows are very fast-paced. Some theater pieces, nothing is said. Maybe a few significant sounds for a minute or 2 minutes. Now, that doesn't give you license as a describer to go on at the mouth. No, you need to let people hear nothing, hear footsteps, whatever, and again, describe what's essential. He puts the knife in the drawer. Well, that's important. The knife is used later to kill her, whatever. You know, so you have to find those pauses. And for television in particular, it can be a fraction of a second. It can be just frames. There are 30 frames in a second. You can just find a few frames and be able to do 2 words. That can help. So it's a little tricky sometimes, but it's a different kind of tricky when there's a lot of silence, like Color of Paradise, and you just weave it around the sounds. Yeah, Melissa, and then the gentleman in the back. Mr. Poor, right?
Yeah. What's the formal training for an audio describer, and how does it compare, let's say, with someone who signs?
Oh, sure. Well, having never, I think I took one sign interpretation class many years ago. So it's hard for me to compare exactly, but the audio describer needs to, I believe, follows these fundamentals: see everything, edit down, language, how do you convey it with words, and then the use of the voice. Our training sessions have been often like 3 days lately. They can be 5 or 6, and they consist of going through these sorts of exercises in observation, in editing, in words, how to describe various still images, videos, and then a lot of practica. A good 2 days of the 3, well, day and a half, is just folks in the class doing it with others, by themselves, etc. And that's basically the pattern that I follow. And in sign interpretation, I don't know, Esther, you took sign years ago.
Well, I think maybe part of the question has to do with what
Microphone.
Standardized certification process or
Right.
So I think part of the question is addressing the professional, and I think audio description is way behind sign interpretation that way. There are standards and certifications.
That's right. We're far younger as a discipline, certainly. I've been working towards, with the American Council of the Blind sponsoring it, they sponsored guidelines that I supervised, kind of a compilation of guidelines around the world. And we're working towards certification for describers. We're not quite there yet. The United Kingdom has it for performing arts describers. We'll get there. Yeah.
So if someone was interested in getting into this kind of work, what would you recommend for them?
Well, I think it makes sense to do a formal training. It makes sense to do crossword puzzles. You become a walking thesaurus, to some extent. I mean, you can also be writing at your computer and just keep thesaurus.com open. I do that. I think it makes sense to take a training like this. There are not that many offered. I do by far most of them, but they are occasionally in Washington or around the country. But if you check my website, audiodescribe.com, my travel schedule and when workshops are is all there. Plus the ACB, the audio description project that I run, their most widely recognized accomplishment has been the website we created at acb.org. It's up there, /ADP. There you have information of all kinds about description, what shows are on television with description, what movies, what DVDs are, and you can order them right through our website, but also training sessions too. So, yeah.
So if, say, someone took your training program and then they wanted to get work in local theater, local galleries, that sort of thing, how would you recommend that they find jobs?
Yeah, in performing arts, by far, it's volunteer work, and that's evolving. Museum description, I hire people to help me write scripts all the time. There are just a few companies that do that. Audio description for museums specific, not just the general audio tours. For video, yes, we hire describers to do that. We actually, in my training, we go over a list of organizations in the country that produce description. So it's a matter of contact. You don't need to live where the company is. This can all be, I use people all over the world. And, nowadays with the internet, it's much easier. Yeah, let me pass it to Lauren's daddy. How about that?
I was wondering what percentage of describers are work off a script, or how much is it live?
Yeah. I'm of the opinion that even for live performing arts, it's best to work toward a script, to really hone what you're going to do. Take the time to make it shorter, to edit, to find the right words. So there are, by far, most description in live theater is volunteer, is somewhat extemporaneous, based on a few viewings and a lot of notes. And I do that, like for the presidential inaugurations. I did that on network television, but there obviously no rehearsal available exactly, although I had a list of the schedule of events, that kind of thing. It's probably 80% of live theater description, and 85% is extemporaneous, non-scripted, the rest scripted and paid. And that's growing, actually, because as we become recognized as a discipline, as a professional activity. So, yeah, Melissa, and then Barbara, and then maybe we'll wrap it up.
Will the American for Disabilities Act pay for audio describers? A college would pay for someone to sign for a deaf student.
Right.
So would it pay for an audio describer?
Well, the ADA is celebrating its 25th anniversary this summer, as a matter of fact. That doesn't pay for anything, but it, unfunded mandates, it requires public entities to be accessible in many different ways. ADA actually doesn't mention audio description specifically. Section 508 covers government that does mention audio description. That's another law. But yes, you're right. Colleges will pay to have description done of videos. They'll pay to have a describer with a student who's blind. The college will pay. Although better is to be sure that all college professors and speakers at conferences and such do self-description. In other words, not I'm 6'5" and I have a head full of thick black curly hair, as most of you can see. Yeah, right. No, self-description as in the image I'm showing. Describe it. And I've written guidelines for that for conferences, trying to get them to do more of that. So, and Barbara, right in front of you there. There you go.
Going back to scripted versus extemporaneous, I was wondering what the experience is like for you when you're doing spontaneous, or when you're done with doing it. Do you second guess yourself?
Well, sure. I missed this and I missed that. But I'll tell you, the experience of doing like the inauguration with no preview, it is something that requires intense concentration. You really have to have blinders up and focus on what you're doing. And the best describers in live theater are like that, too. You should be exhausted when it's done because it's a lot of energy, it's a lot of concentration, and as I say, and, it's with a script, though, too, as I oftentimes say, you're keeping half an eye on the script and 1.5 eyes on the stage. And even for television, you have to, the voicer certainly has to keep an eye on the screen and the time code and the script and the cues and read the description. It's a lot to do. So even the voice talents, I think, have to be trained in what description is. It ain't like doing a 30-second spot, which most voice talents are used to. So, well, thank you all for coming. This was fun to share a little bit of it with you. And you can buy the book out. I said that already. Yes. Okay. All righty.